She was the voice behind Pretty Little Baby, but Connie Frances's real life was anything but pretty. Behind the glamour and golden records was a woman drowning in unimaginable pain. Her story is not just one of fame, but of survival. She was betrayed by the people closest to her, the man she loved was nearly murdered by her own father, and each of her 4 marriages ended in heartbreak. Then came the night that changed everything, a brutal assault at knife point that shattered her spirit and silenced her voice. As if that wasn't enough, her beloved brother was gunned down in cold blood, and the weight of it all dragged her into a darkness so deep, she vanished from the music world for 7 years. This is the untold, heartbreaking story of Connie Francis, a legend who paid a heavy price for her fame. Before we begin, if you're a fan of Connie Francis or have a soft spot for timeless Western hits, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share your favorite Connie Francis song in the comments. Hello, my name is Mr. Heyman, and today, we're diving into a part of Connie's life few dare to discuss, the 5 singers she despised the most. Her story reads like a Hollywood screenplay, filled with heartbreak, betrayal, and resilience. Born as Conchetta Rosa Maria Franconero on December 12, 1937, in Newark, New Jersey, Connie grew up in a vibrant, multicultural neighborhood deeply rooted in Italian and Jewish traditions. It was there she discovered not only her voice but a unique ability to learn languages like Yiddish and Hebrew, a skill that later helped her connect with global audiences and record hits in multiple tongues. But behind the voice that charmed millions was a woman who navigated fierce rivalries, deep personal wounds, and industry betrayals that would change her forever. In the earliest chapters of her life, music wasn't the center of attention, not even in her own home. Her father, George Franconero, a hard-working roofing contractor, hardly noticed Connie's musical spark. But that all changed when she turned just 3 years old. He suddenly saw what others had missed, a rare, almost spiritual connection to music. When he asked whether she wanted to learn the piano or the accordion, Connie chose the accordion, later calling it her first big mistake, a decision that would shape her childhood in unexpected ways. From that point forward, George transformed into her fiercest advocate, almost like a stage mother in disguise. He made it his mission to get her in front of every crowd, booking her to sing and play at any local venue that would listen. On September 25, 1940, the family grew with the birth of her younger brother, George Jr. But unlike Connie, he didn't share her artistic inclinations, and their father's unwavering focus remained glued to Connie's rise, turning her early years into a whirlwind of ambition, expectation, and relentless performance. By the tender age of 4, Connie Francis was already doing what most adults only dream of, performing for audiences who desperately needed hope. In 1941, she began entertaining wounded veterans at a New Jersey hospital, planting the seeds of a lifelong bond with servicemen that would define much of her later philanthropy. This was more than just a child singing songs, it was a moment of healing, and Connie never forgot it. Years later, she would travel all the way to Vietnam to sing for U.S. troops, making it her mission to always show up for those who had worn the uniform. That same year, barely out of toddlerhood, she stepped onto the stage at the Olympic Music Park in Irvington, New Jersey. The spotlight seemed to recognize her even then, and Connie, driven by her father's fierce encouragement and her own undeniable gift, began a journey few could match. By 1951, Connie enrolled at Newark Arts High School, a place where her talent could be nurtured beyond local performances. Her dedication and discipline weren't just on stage, they extended to the classroom, too. In 1953, the family relocated to Belleville, New Jersey, where Connie continued to balance her growing ambitions with academics. By 1955, she graduated from Belleville High School at the top of her class, a clear sign that this rising star wasn't just born for fame, she was built for greatness. She and her father went to see George Sheik, who was the host of the children's program Startime Kids on NBC, when she was still in school. He first claimed to have enough vocalists, but Sheik had a change of heart after hearing her father explain that she played the accordion. During high school, Connie was invited to appear on the show and gave weekly performances. She soon made an appearance on the Christmas special hosted by Arthur Godfrey. He advised her to use Connie Francis since he found it difficult to pronounce her last name. At this time, Connie was still living under the severe regulations of her Italian father, who forbade her from dating, and she started recording demo songs for songwriters. In an attempt to land her a deal, Chic and Connie's father visited many record labels. Before MGM heard her song Freddie, everyone said no. By coincidence, the song was a hit with the MGM executive's son, Freddie. In 1955, Connie got her first contract thanks to that fortunate break. In addition, Chic was overseeing a young Bobby Darin, who started penning songs for Connie. They didn't get along at first, but they quickly fell in love. But her father was enraged. He even threatened Bobby with a gun in an attempt to keep them apart. They continued to write covert letters. Those letters were discovered among Bobby's belongings after his death at the age of 37. Connie subsequently stated that her greatest regret was not marrying Bobby. Meanwhile, Connie's father was approached by two mobsters, promising to use their jukebox network to promote her music. Not wanting to jeopardize her future, he declined. It was difficult to resist such an offer in New Jersey, but the family decided to maintain their independence and pursue her work independently. It was a brave decision, particularly in New Jersey, where mob influence was very much in play, especially with regard to unions and construction families. The Franco household was no different. Nevertheless, they were adamant about building Connie's career the honest way, regardless of the time it took, and they chose integrity above shortcuts. Connie Francis was dropped by MGM Records following a string of unsuccessful records. She was down to one last recording session. For a year, her father had pleaded with her to perform Who's Sorry Now, an old ballad from 1923. Despite the fact that MGM and Connie didn't like the song, she recorded it with 16 minutes remaining in the session to appease her father. 3 months have gone by. Dick Clark, host of the American Bandstand, discovered the tune on his desk at the end of 1957. On New Year's Day 1958, he played it on television. When her name was announced, Connie, who was watching at home with her family, was taken aback. Connie played the song live on American Bandstand, and it sold 1 million copies in just 5 weeks. They became good friends, and she will always be grateful to Dick Clark. Connie needed another hit after that. She received some song offers from new songwriters Howard Greenfield and Neil Sedaka, but nothing really struck a chord until they played her Stupid Cupid. She adored it, even though they didn't think it fit her. She was correct. It turned into another hit. Both Frankie and Lipstick on Your Collar, which she released in 1959, went on to become gold records. My Happiness and Among My Souvenirs were also published in the same year. She recorded the title song and acted in the 1960 film Where the Boys Are. Her song, Everybody's Somebody's Fool, quickly became the #1 tune. Connie became a major nightclub celebrity after singing at the 1961 Oscars. She made an appearance in Follow the Boys in 1963 and kept hitting the charts. For 4 years in a row, American Bandstand viewers chose her as the finest female vocalist. She wed press agent Dick Canelease in 1964, but their marriage lasted only 3 months. Later on, she acknowledged, "I just wanted to have sex." Her final film was released in 1965. She quit the movie business because she didn't like being an actress. She won the 1967 Las Vegas Best Female Singer Award. Singing God Bless America to U.S. soldiers in Vietnam in 1968 was one of her most moving performances. As they joined her in singing, several of them were crying. She gave up her work to raise her husband's kids after marrying hairstylist Izzy Marion in 1971. However, after a year, they fell out, and she returned home. She married travel company owner Joseph Garzili on Valentine's Day 1972. Her first love, Bobby Darin, passed away during heart surgery later that year, leaving her devastated. Connie subsequently stated that even though she provided financial assistance to her husband during their marriage, he nevertheless urged her to continue singing. First up, Bobby Darin. Bobby Darin and Connie Francis were more than simply co-workers in the music business. They had been youthful lovers. When they were both trying to get into the industry, they met. Though Connie's conservative father fiercely disapproved of Darren, their romance may have gone down in mythology. He even ended the relationship by chasing him away while brandishing a gun. Connie was heartbroken. The emotional scar for Connie was further exacerbated by Darren's subsequent marriage to actress Sandra Dee. She found it impossible to even hear his name for years. The hurt of unresolved sentiments, betrayal, and lost love became a bitterness that persisted long after Darren's ascent to stardom and even after his untimely and terrible death. Second place goes to Dionne Warwick. Connie and Dionne had quite different styles and personalities. Dionne was renowned for her calm, collected demeanor, which bordered on royalty. In contrast, Connie showed her affection by wearing it on her sleeve. A lengthy, quiet enmity began with a brief backstage encounter at a TV taping in the late 1960s. Witnesses claimed that Dionne hardly recognized Connie, which caused her great pain. They avoided each other at occasions after that. There was never any public drama or shouting, and it was never explosive. However, the tension was so intense that it persisted for years among friends and co-workers. It developed into a long-running, silent rivalry. Two queens of heartbreak engaged in what some insiders referred to be a Cold War. Lesley Gore is number 3. Record executives started referring to Lesley Gore as the new Connie Francis after her smash song, It's My Party, topped the charts. Connie felt a fire ignited by that comparison. She believed Gore was being thrust into the spotlight too soon and hadn't done her dues. There was no affection between them, even though they performed together on package tours. Lesley's achievement was once disregarded by Connie, who said, "Give her 5 years, then we'll talk." Gore, in her opinion, was an industry product who was riding the wave that Connie had laboriously created. It was more than simply a professional rivalry. Connie's pride and her position in music history were both impacted. Barbra Streisand is number 4. Barbra Streisand's vocal ability was always acknowledged by Connie. She even openly praised her voice. However, behind the scenes, Connie frequently felt irritated by Barbra's apparent contempt for more established celebrities. In one well-known instance, Barbra silently passed Connie during rehearsals. This seemed like a purposeful snub to Connie. Barbra, in her opinion, viewed artists from the 1950s and early 1960s as archaic artifacts deserving of little respect. Connie was greatly hurt by the quiet lack of recognition from someone she looked up to. They never got into a public altercation, but their professionalism became well known on the field. Brenda Lee is number 5. Around 1959, Brenda Lee and Connie Francis both burst onto the music scene. Although they were young, gifted, and at the top of the charts, their styles couldn't be more dissimilar. Connie was sensitive and graceful. Brenda was explosive and ferocious. Connie once jokingly said, "Her shrieks leave me reaching for aspirin," referring to the headache she had from Brenda's loud singing. Brenda also didn't hold back. She called Connie's style old-fashioned in an interview. The tension persisted even though the two hardly ever discussed one another again. By depicting them as rivals, the media enjoyed stirring things up, which only served to widen the gulf between them. Peace was never truly made between them. Legendary vocalist Connie Francis was attempting to return in November 1974. She had just finished her debut performance at the Westbury Music Fair in New York, which was the opening stop on her national tour. Although the night appeared to be the beginning of something positive, what transpired would permanently alter her life. Connie stayed at the Howard Johnson Motel in Jericho, New York, following her performance. Her spouse made plans to make sure she wasn't alone while he was out of town on business. A few rooms away, in the same motel, were her secretary and the secretary's husband. Connie, who has always been independent, refused their request to move closer to her room. She assured them she would be all right. Connie felt secure as she went to bed at 2:30 a.m. that night. Her life, however, took a terrible turn a few hours later, at around 5:30 a.m. A young man with a knife was standing over her bed when she woke up. He had tampered with the motel's malfunctioning sliding glass door to get into her room. A significant security vulnerability that would eventually be discovered. He was there for more than just robbing her. He cautioned her against screaming while holding the knife to her throat. He tied her to a chair with her hands behind her back, flipped the chair, and dumped a mattress on top of her after the horrific attack. He appeared to have intended to murder her. However, he became alarmed upon realizing that woman might be well known. He stole her valuables and mink coat, but not her life. Despite her full trauma, Connie somehow wriggled herself free and crawled to the phone. She was taken in shock, emotionally and physically broken, and sent to the hospital. She then withdrew into her bedroom for months at home, isolating herself. There was no way she could leave the house, much less go out in public. She had filed to adopt a kid with her husband, Joseph Garzillo, just months prior to the attack. They were given custody of a baby boy, whom they named Joseph Garzillo Jr., 2 months after the assault. Connie's entire universe revolved around that youngster. The trauma and dread never really left her, but he gave her a cause to live. For failing to provide enough protection, Connie sued Howard Johnson, the chain of motels, in 1976. It was a protracted and emotionally taxing trial. She relived the frightening night on the witness stand for 6 days. According to a police officer's testimony, the motel had already seen multiple break-ins with no action taken, and the sliding doors could be readily forced open. After winning the case, Connie received $2.5 million. She gave the majority of it to charities that aid victims of sexual assault. Another crushing blow followed. Connie underwent nasal surgery in 1977 to address a persistent allergy exacerbated by air conditioning. But a terrible event happened. She lost her singing voice following 3 surgeries. She may never be able to sing again, according to doctors. It was intolerable to someone whose voice was the foundation of who she was. She tried overdosing on medications to end her life since her despair had gotten so acute. Fortunately, her life was spared when her housekeeper discovered her in time. Despite giving birth, her marriage was failing. Connie and Joseph attempted to hold things collectively, but the trauma had left deep scars. Even after 4 years, Connie couldn't be bodily intimate with him. On October 1, 1978, they divorced. Then, simply while matters seemed like they couldn't get any worse, tragedy hit once more. On March 6, 1981, 7 years after the resort attack, Connie's more youthful brother, George Franco Nero Jr., turned into gunned down in cold blood. He was scraping ice off his vehicle in front of his home in North Caldwell, New Jersey, whilst 2 mobsters approached and shot him. Connie changed into devastated. They were very near. Later, in an emotional look on Larry King's stay, Connie found out that her brother had turned out to be an informant towards the mafia. He had refused authorities protection, and this was the fee he paid. The gunmen were by no means stuck. When Larry King requested her if she knew who ordered the hit, Connie stated she did, however would not name them. "Do you need to discover me face down in the river?" she asked. It was a chilling reminder of the way deep and dangerous those connections ran. And then there is the tale of Don Rickles, the pointy-tongued comedian who as soon as discovered himself in actual trouble after unknowingly insulting a mobster's wife all through a display in Las Vegas. His jokes hit the wrong goal and phrase got to him that his legs may get broken. In a panic, he turned to Connie for help. She made one name and saved him. Rickles by no means forgot what she did for him. Connie Francis had confronted the unthinkable attack, heartbreak, the loss of her voice, the homicide of her brother, and the risk of violence from the underworld. But through it all, she kept preventing. Her story isn't simply considered one of repute and track. It is one among survival, strength, and the need to upward thrust again, even when the arena tries to silence you. 8 months after the tragic homicide of her brother, George Jr., Connie Francis had been silent from the degree for 7 long years. She hadn't done, and it felt like her voice had truly disappeared. However, one normal day at the same time as taking walks down the street, something first-rate came about. She determined herself singing again. And this time it truly gave the impression of her. Conquer with emotion, she rushed to her car, played her vintage songs, and sang together with excitement. She fast referred to as her father and supervisor and said, "Book me somewhere. I need to sing once more." Her comeback show became in Westbury, New York. The very city where she had last finished earlier than her long silence. The target audience went wild, giving her 5 standing ovations. It became a powerful return. However, just 2 years later, in 1983, things took a difficult flip again. Connie's father had her committed to a psychiatric sanatorium in Dallas. She became released after 4 days, but he had her committed once more just months later in Florida. Each time she changed into launched Speedy. Docs diagnosed her with manic despair. For the next 4 years, her profession paused as she went in and out of hospitals 17 times in overall. Even her close buddy Dick Clark needed to arrange for her to be hospitalized, calling it one of the toughest matters he ever did. No matter the turmoil, Connie stored her spirit alive. In 1984, she launched her first autobiography, Who's Sorry Now?, which have become a primary, one New York Instance's bestseller. She married television manufacturer Bob Parkinson in 1985, however the marriage ended in just 8 months. It wasn't until 1989 that doctors in the end located the proper medication for her. For years, she was misdiagnosed and given drugs that worsened her condition, causing deep despair and suicidal thoughts. Though she again to the degree, it changed into at a slower pace. In 2004, she completed in Las Vegas for the primary time in 15 years. In 2007, she offered out crowds in San Francisco. And in 2010, she joined the Grand Divas of Stage on the Las Vegas Hilton. In 2017, Connie launched her 2D autobiography, Among My Souvenirs, wherein she shared the full story of her high-quality, turbulent, and galvanizing existence.